So excited that you chose to spend your time with us today. This is the SWAC monthly webinar, and we're all in for a terrific treat because we have just some phenomenal experts in the field of augmentative alternative communication. And you know, Rachel, I don't think we've particularly sat in together on anything, but I know you are, I can just tell already, just like Chris, and that you bring so much energy and excitement, enthusiasm to the content. So we're all in for a great treat. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. And you are correct. I'm super passionate about the topic at hand, AAC. So it just kind of exudes from me. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. Am I already? How does this work? Let's see. There we go. Okay. So here are our slides. Doing that thing, Chris, am I seeing black boxes or we're okay?
No, you look good.
Okay, good. We've been having some weird things with webinars on my computer these days. Okay, so here are the slides, the QR codes here. We're just going to be doing a little bit of kind of overview things today, but then really this whole session is about you guys and answering your questions, collectively sharing information. You know, we're working with some of the most complex individuals, and the more brains on, you know, our challenges, the better. So that's kind of what this presentation is going to be all about. I'm going to just briefly introduce ourselves. So I'm Rachel Madel. I am a speech language pathologist and I specialize in AAC. I own a private practice in Los Angeles where I do a lot of actually parent coaching and training on the topic of AAC. I do a lot of presenting on this topic, and here are all the ways that you can connect with me. I'm pretty active on social media. So feel free to follow along if you're interested in that. Whoa. Here are all my disclosures, none of which are really relevant to today's talk, but there's a link at the bottom of the slides if you're interested in figuring out where all my money comes from. But again, none of which is really relevant to today. We're going to dive into kind of, again, a brief overview and then going through you guys, the questions that you guys have. So I'm really excited to dive in.
My name's Chris Bugaj, and my day job is the Assistive Technology Specialist for Loudoun County Public Schools out here in Virginia. And the way that works in Virginia is we have, our school districts are based on an entire county. So I am the Assistive Technology Specialist for close to 100 schools, I don't know, 9,900 schools. It's a growing area. But my background is a speech language pathologist. And then like 3 years into my career as a speech language pathologist, the county came to me and said, do you want to be one of the founding members of our assistive technology team? And I was like, yes, I want to do that. And so I've never looked back. I think of myself as someone who works in assistive technology with a speech language pathology background, as opposed to a speech language pathologist that works in assistive technology, if that makes sense. And really, what I really think of myself as is somebody who does inclusive design, or an inclusive design facilitator. I like to think that my day job is to really work with educators, all different educators, to help them design educational experiences that are inclusive of everybody. Throughout this career, I've been able to had the great fortune to write a couple books. So my most recent book, my most recent solo book is called The New Assistive Tech, Make Learning Awesome for All. And my most recent collaborative effort is called Inclusive Learning 365, EdTech Strategies for Every Day of the Year. That's written with 3 other authors, and it's just like it sounds. It's 365 strategies, 1 strategy per page, about how to design these inclusive experiences. We put the strategy first and the technology second. The technology used to support our design. And then I feel like there's something else, Rachel. I don't know, like every week, every Wednesday, I do something. What is that thing? Help remind me. Oh yeah, a podcast.
We do a podcast together. So put in the chat, have you guys ever heard of Talking with Tech? Are you Talking with Tech listeners? Or put in the chat if you haven't heard of it yet.
Or put it in the chat. if you've been on Talking with Tech, do you see who's in the room? Someone who's been on Talking with Tech.
Uh-oh. I can't see. I don't see anybody on here, but I'm sure I can spot them out. Awesome.
Wow, there's a bunch of listeners here. Excellent.
There is. It's really exciting. So this is a completely free resource that Chris and I started doing 5 years ago. This is our anniversary month, Chris. We've been doing the podcast for 5 years now, which just crazy how time flies. But we, both have a passion for AAC, and we talk about it every week. We have lots of, basically the way the podcast is set up is we have a kind of discussion, him and I, in this banter in the beginning of our episodes where we're sharing our experiences, asking each other questions, venting sometimes about the challenges that we're facing in our own, sphere. And then we lead into an interview where we have interviewed a clinician or a parent or, lots of kind of people who are adjacent to AAC and working in the field. We also, my favorite episodes are AAC users. So we have lots and lots of episodes where we interview AAC users about their experience. And those are definitely my favorite ones to share and also to listen to.
Katie and Hildy, since you haven't listened yet, this is for you. We'll just explain that some of the feedback we get from the podcast is that because we're two hosts, and I work in public education and Rachel works as a private practice clinician, but we have these aligned views that it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm hearing sort of the same message from two different perspectives. And in fact, sometimes that's what we hear, is that there's fights between private and public. And so we're hoping that we are an example of how you can work together.
I know it does feel like there's kind of like this battle sometimes, which is really unfortunate. But I think that, Chris, it's really nice to kind of share both of our experiences, because you work mostly with professionals and a little bit with families, and I work mostly with families and a little bit with professionals. And so it really is just a nice kind of balance where we're able to share our experiences in a way that I think helps kind of create this big picture. Uh-oh. I don't know why this is happening.
All right, everybody, here it is. So we've been talking about the podcast, and what we're actually doing right now, right? We're recording, and what we're recording is we're going to take the audio of this hour and we're going to put it on the podcast. This is going to be a podcast episode. We have done this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other times. This is our 7th time doing a Talking with Tech Live, which most of those are out on the podcast where you can just go listen to them for examples. We have done a few. We do have a Patreon, so sometimes we record things just for our Patreon subscribers. So there's some that are like behind the scenes, just for the exclusive people that are supporting the podcast financially. That said, know that we want this to be a rich conversation. This is meant to be not the Chris and Rachel show. You can listen to us every week on the podcast. It's meant to be an active discussion where we're sharing things together, putting your ideas out there and sharing. When you have a problem, let's crowdsource it and come up with, well, okay, here's something that worked for me, or here's something that I'm thinking about that might work. It's meant to be an open discussion. We'll record it and we'll share it to the world.
So this is how we're going to kind of source the questions. This bit.ly link or QR code is going to be how you can submit a question. So definitely get your phone or iPad out, get the QR code going, or you can, we'll pop it in the chat so you guys have it. Think about some things that are coming up for you in your practice and some challenges that you have, where we can, again, crowdsource information from each other.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple Google form. It's really just like, what's your question? And it's going to populate over to a spreadsheet, which we're actually going to show you next. So this link that says responses, if you got the slide deck, is actually where the questions where the questions will go. Everything over on the left-hand column, the first 3 columns, are locked. You don't have access to change those first columns. So if you submit a question there, it'll show up there with my question is, and then everything to the right of those 3 columns, so D, E, F, everything over there, well, this is free form. You all have editing access to this Google Sheet. So you could type in a tool. You could type in some sort of strategy. If you have some sort of hyperlink that is a good resource that you'd like to share, you can put it right in there next to whatever the question is. It's going to be a pretty quiet hour if we don't have any questions in here, though, because Rachel and I don't have anything planned to talk about. It's all meant to be, well, okay, what are some things that's on my mind, stuff I've been thinking about, a particular student that I've been working with, or a family, the challenges of, just before we got on record and started recording, we were talking about the challenges of the turnover of the number of teachers and educators that are sort of leaving the profession right now. How are we going about that? So there's lots of different things we can chat about. Just think about whatever's in your sphere right now, whatever's sort of plaguing you, whatever the monkey on your shoulder. That's what we want to hear about. We want to chat about.
All right. So as we kind of populate this, we're going to just go over a few different slides as you guys get your questions ready. And we're going to roll in. But first, we're just going to go over some basic things that Chris, you and I go over every single presentation we give, for the most part, most of these things.
You know, Rachel, I was looking at these slides just beforehand and I thought we could really speed through them. This is just to get to, because we've already got 2 questions in the Google form already. So I'm excited to get chatting. But one thing that we wanted to talk about real quick here was just mention, what is the definition of evidence-based practice? A thing that we see in the world, it's a thing we bet you see in the world, is that people define evidence-based practice differently. If we just took a minute and asked you all to type in, what does evidence-based practice mean to you? We'd probably get a bunch of different definitions. And if we went and talked to other professionals who weren't working in the world of speech language pathology or in education, they might get a different response. And so the way we define it is using what the American Speech and Hearing Association uses to define evidence-based practice, which is a combination of 3 things. The first one is, what's the research telling us? Well, we know that. Second one is, what are the professionals saying works for them? Oftentimes this is where it stops. So here's the third one. The third one is, what are the AAC users themselves, the people who can say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it, what are they saying has worked for them? And just real quick, put it in the chat, if you don't mind, put this number in the chat. How many people do you know who can use AAC to say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it? They tell us, put it in the chat. Like, how many do you know them? What's your number? I know. Okay, see this, look at the numbers that are coming up. Not surprising that there are single-digit numbers, people listening to the podcast right now as the chat fills up, and many of those numbers are zeros. Some are 1s, some are 3s. With the highest number we see in the chat right now is 3, right? And so this is one of the reasons why Rachel and I do the podcast, is that we have a whole bunch of AAC users that come on and share their perspectives so we can learn from them about what works and what doesn't work. Not just strategies that work, but what to stay away from. Whatever you hear, whatever you learn in a Facebook group, on TikTok, on Instagram, whenever you're reading a book, ask yourself these 3 questions. What's the research telling us? What are professionals out there saying? And then the third one, I'm going to say maybe the most important one, is, what are the AAC users themselves saying works? If something doesn't check off all 3 of those boxes, then it's sus, you know. And do you know what I mean by sus? Anyone? Jen was here. I know Jen knows what sus was. I don't know if she's still here, but anyone know what I mean by sus? If it doesn't check off all the suspicious, Carrie, exactly, right? It's, I'm not sure if I should put my minutes into learning about this strategy if it doesn't check off all 3 of these boxes.
All right. I'm trying to see how many questions we have, Chris, and if we want to just...
We've got like 6, 7. We've got 7 questions. So I think maybe we dive into unless there's something else in the slides, I'm thinking we dive into the questions. I
mean, I think we might like cover some of this stuff in the questions. I think I saw one question that feels like, we'll see. Okay.
Here we go.
Let's roll. Okay, so the first one, we're gonna go in order. How do I keep up with all the new AAC programs and features coming out? does feel like a lot, right? Does feel like it's always changing, because it actually is always changing. I feel like that's one of the challenges with technology in general, right? Is that it's always evolving. And, myself personally, I know that I don't know every feature of every system, especially because it's always changing. But what I do know is how I can help teach language using AAC. That's the thing that I think is important to remember with this notion that I don't know all the things. Well, like, we all know how to teach language, right? And we can use whatever tool and technology we're using to teach the language. Does anyone else have any other ideas on like how to keep up with the latest things that are happening? Like, what ways do you guys actually keep up to date with all the different changes happening in the world of technology with AAC?
You should feel free, since this is an audio podcast, to unmute, right? Do you have the ability to unmute?
Yes, please jump in and share. If
Jump in, let's talk. Turn on your camera if you want. This is a conversation.
I'll share. I know for me, it's really helpful signing up to newsletters for a lot of these companies. And they're always setting up kind of like the newest, latest and greatest, any changes and things to kind of keep in mind with using the programs with students.
Excellent. So you like company newsletters. Do you sign up for their mailing list?
Yeah, for their mailing list and anything else involved with the AC, there's a lot of other subscription letters. So anything I could subscribe up to, I do to kind of get in the know. And a lot of times they'll send some suggestions of, have you heard this new app or this new system? And it kind of lets me know that there's something new out there to kind of try and look into.
Cool.
Love it.
I see someone put in the chat AAC for the SLP on Facebook. Yes, that seems to be one of the most popular Facebook groups. That's certainly the one that I go to as well, where people pose questions and people comment on answers. What's AAC Learning Journey? Someone put that in the chat. What is that?
Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Sorry, it's something that's new through, is it PRC and Saltillo, I believe, that they have like learning classroom platform where you can either take free online courses. Sometimes I share them with parents as resources if their schedules can't go with school schedules, to come in for training, and also to like our support staff members if they want to learn more. And then there's options for paid trainings too, I believe.
Yes, I had heard of that. I just forgot the name because it's a generic name, like AAC Learning Journey. It could be anybody, but yes, that does sound familiar. All right, cool.
Awesome.
Other thoughts?
How do we stay on the cutting edge of the tech? I feel like we all have like that person who always knows, right? Like, oh, like Sherry always knows like the cutting edge, like technology stuff. And I think that social media is really helpful for that. Like, I think that the latest kind of additions or changes are happening are being posted on social media, following the kind of device companies and things like that, I think is a good idea and suggestion.
I have an analogy for this too. And what I'd like to suggest is that people should forgive themselves if they don't know all the features. There's a sort of a trend over the last number of, let's say 10 to 15 years, where people feel guilty for not knowing, oh, I didn't know that was a feature. Oh, I didn't know that thing. I didn't know the newest accessibility feature that just came out on iPads, right? In iOS 16 or whatever. I didn't know the app updated to include this. It's nigh impossible in the world of assistive technology to know everything. The analogy that I like to use, I like my analogies, Rachel. It's like trying to know every new thing that's out in your Amazon Prime. You go to Amazon, oh, what's the latest thing? Well, there's a billion things out there in that you could go shopping for, right? What you do though is that you think about, like, if I was going to go shopping for Rachel's birthday, I'd be like, okay, Rachel, what do I know about Rachel? Well, Rachel's big into AAC. She owns her own private practice. She likes to surf. I'm not giving anything away, right? It's fair that I say that on the podcast. You're a surfer.
Oh,
you like to surf?
You like to surf. I'm a surfer. Right? Sounds cool.
I would make a sort of a list of things that I know about Rachel, and then I'd go over to Amazon Prime and I'd be like, all right, what are some things that sort of I can hone in on, like, okay, businesswoman, private practice, she likes surfing, she does a podcast, she's big into AAC. It can narrow down my search so I could find something for her that would be like, oh, okay, this would be the perfect thing for Rachel. I'm going to get her a subscription to this to water earphones that she can wear while she's surfing, right? Because I've narrowed down based on what I thought I know about Rachel. And that's the same idea with students and choosing things, choosing the technology is you can narrow down, especially during the selection process, by asking a series of questions to say, okay, what is the thing that the student needs? Then you go shopping. Then you go find the features and programs. And oh, I didn't realize that this tool now has this feature. That's when you can go and discover what you need. Sound fair?
I agree.
I agree too. Actually, I just ran into a situation this week where a child's primary language was Arabic. And so I had to go searching for what AAC systems worked with Arabic. So
Carrie, wait,
Yeah.
you didn't know what system? You didn't know every system that might have Arabic? What's
Nope,
wrong
and
with
I've-
you?
and I've been doing AAC for 20 years. So, and it's constantly changing, right? So I'm happy that I found some systems that have Arabic because I was a little worried that I would find none. But yeah, so
Well, now you got to tell us, Carrie, what'd you find?
Tell
well,
us.
I found that well, TouchChat and LAMP both have Arabic voices, but LAMP doesn't have an Arabic vocabulary, so you would have to design it from scratch. And then TouchChat has some vocabulary files, but their largest vocabulary only has 15 buttons. So that wasn't going to work for this child. And then Grid has some Arabic vocabulary files. Again, they're a little more restricted. So not as many buttons, but TD Snap was the winner with as far as the robust vocabulary with Arabic. So it's interesting though, because of course Arabic is from right to left instead of left to right. So like you take TD Snap and you put it and that's how it looks. So I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to be able to implement this with the child since I don't speak Arabic, but we'll figure it out.
That's like what we do, right? We just like keep rolling with the punches and figure out what we don't know.
And
I
I'm
love
pretty
it.
sure Avaz has some Arabic vocabulary too, but I didn't get a chance to look at their files. So
Carrie, I know I would also explore Cough Drop. I don't know for
Oh, yeah.
sure, but that would be
Well,
another one.
Cough Drop, fun fact about Cough Drop, it integrates with Google Translate. So any language that Google Translate has, Cough Drop has the ability to do. Now, you would ideally have a native speaker look at the translations because sometimes they can be incorrect.
Okay.
But that's one of the nicest things about Cough Drop is that like any language that Google Translate has, Cough Drop has.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I will look at Cough Drop as well.
Yeah.
What's most important there is Carrie's thought process, really, right? I mean, Carrie, you went through like, okay, here's a list and I'm going to go check out what has what has what. And that's really the answer to this question, I think, is you can't keep up on and know all of it, but you know what to search for and what to hunt for, right? Awesome.
Love it. Should we keep on keeping on, Chris?
Yeah, I guess I'll read this one.
All right.
All right, we'll want to go every other.
Sure.
All right, here's this one. How do you decide when a student is or is not ready for high-tech AAC? What does everybody think?
I know I want to answer, but I'll open it up to the audience.
I can literally see your tongue bleeding through the screen, right? Biting it so hard. What does everyone think? Sure, Carrie, go for it.
Okay, no prerequisites comes to mind. So yeah, I would consider high-tech AAC for pretty much anybody that their communication needs are not being met through speech and consider it. So yeah.
I think
Thank you,
Jill and
Ashley.
Trudy agree with you. They're saying no prerequisites to learning high-tech AAC and always start with robust. Other thoughts? All right, that's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like this idea of not being ready is just kind of a mindset shift. If we shift into presuming that all children have the capacity to learn high-tech AAC, and I think especially if we shift our emphasis away from this expectation that we have a high level of accuracy when we introduce AAC and that we need to have a high level of accuracy, it gets us out of this mindset of like, they're not ready yet, right? I do a lot of work with lots of different, ages of students, including early intervention so birth to 3. And, if I put a high-tech speech generating device in front of a 2-year-old, no, they might not show me immediately that they can use it with accuracy, but over time, as a teaching communication partners, how to model language and with development and enough motivating opportunities for kids to, communicate with us, eventually they learn, right? So this shift of mindset from, they have to be ready and how do we know when they transition and all these things, to just assuming that with the right supports and the right time and the right tool that we can teach them how to use it and that they can learn how to use robust AAC. All right, this next question is kind of similar, Chris. What should our response be if our district AT SLP has many prerequisite skills that are required before a student moves to a more high-tech device? This is what's happening. This is the reality though, right? Is like, I am in LA and LAUSD is one of the biggest school districts in the country. And they are working under this kind of candidacy model. Like some people and some kids are good candidates for high-tech AAC and others aren't. So what do we do in situations where we're working with someone who has all this power, right? This AT SLP has the power to say, yes, you get it, but no, you don't. What do we do when we really know that all of our students deserve to have access to robust language systems?
What do we all think?
What are some ideas here? Surely many of us have probably been in the situation where we're like, you are not correct with this notion of high-tech AAC prerequisites.
Yeah, we know this person, not like literally, just people like this.
Can I share a recent situation?
Please, Jackie.
I literally just got the email like yesterday and we're working through it this week, is that a student's already on a robust system LAMP. And then I got an email about a meeting that happened that I wasn't part of about it was suggested by another district team member to go back down to PECS to teach the initiation of communication. I know. So I trained all the team last year monthly about, vocabulary builder, how to shape behavior, things, a lot of what you teach on your podcast. I even like referenced your podcast. So just kind of stepping back and working our way back forward, trying to get us back to how can we use these features on these devices to get what the function that they're going for, not going back to low tech.
Oh my goodness, Jackie.
No one can see time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more though, because it does sound like similar to this question here is why were they feeling that way? Like you said, you've been training them, you've been participating in professional learning experiences. Would you say monthly? Like,
yeah, near the end of the school year, we finally got it started and then they were like liking it. And then I was there monthly. So the reason is, you've referenced it, is the turnover. It's a new SLP and the previous SLP is still at the school, but is not on the caseload for this student. So it's kind of like just having to redo a little bit. So I'm meeting with the SLP tomorrow to kind of catch up and see what we can do to help the student with maybe hopefully the robust system or figure out where the miscommunication was.
I also have a question, Jackie. So I heard you say the students, they want to go back to picture exchange or PECS because they want to work on initiation. So does that mean that the student's not touching the device at all?
I think, they'll say it's not purposeful. And I did a bit of training about how to shape behavior towards what we want. And, if we're stimming, I remember, Rachel, you did an episode with somebody about stimming on a device and how to shape that, or what's the purpose behind that. So we did a lot of training on that. But again, it wasn't with this particular SLP. So I have to kind of get my feet back in that school and do it a little bit over again.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not really the initiation, right? It's accuracy. Like, and I think that that's like an important distinction to make when everyone's like, we need to go back and teach initiation. Like, well, no, they're initiating, right? Like anytime they touch and say a word, they are communicating. How can we attribute meaning to that word? And that's how we shape their responses, right? That's how we make it meaningful. And so I think I just wanted to add that because it feels like something that's important. Also, since we were talking about prerequisites, I feel like that this idea of using PECs as a way to teach initiation, and that's the only way we can do that, I think is false. I think we can teach kids how to initiate by actually putting high-tech AAC in front of them and then teaching them how their words have power. When they touch a button and it says a word, like that is initiation. And most of our kids are doing that, right? This idea of having to exchange a picture back and forth, like to teach initiation, I feel like doesn't really make sense when we know long-term we're trying to transition kids to more robust systems.
You know,
That's a
for,
good point. Thanks.
oh, Carrie, go ahead.
Oh, I just think, you know, I'm wondering if why this person would like have all these prerequisite skills. And I know like I've been in this field for a while. So the reasoning we had prerequisite skills way back in the day is because these devices are super expensive, right? And we had to justify why we would be getting these expensive devices, but they're totally more available these days. And I'm not sure what district this person is in, but even if they don't have funds within their district, we have our SWAC loan bank, we have reps that have loaners. So I'm wondering if it, you know, it's just a matter of like asking this person like, hey, I know you say that they don't have these skills yet, but could we just try? Could we just try a high-tech device and just see? And if it doesn't work out, you know, you can go back, but you know, what's the hurt in trying, you know, and seeing if you can get in the door that way.
I love what you're saying there, Carrie. It's really you're asking the person questions. And one of those questions is, what's the harm? What do you think will happen if we try it? What's the worst thing that could happen? What's informing your decision? You know, all sorts of these reflective questions, or in Jackie's case, why do you think the way you think? You know, those are sorts of the open-ended questions that can start the dialogue rolling.
I also find that it's like when you actually ask specific questions about what the student's actually doing, we find that sometimes the student is accurate. And I feel like we just throw it away because we're like, well, it's not all the time. Well, it's like, you know, we can't expect perfection from our students. And so I think asking specifically, Jackie, like, okay, can you tell me some situations where the student is, you know, using language purposely on the AAC? And then all of a sudden we start revealing, well, they can do it with this and this and this. And it's like, okay, so we can't say that they're not being purposeful. Sometimes, sure, they're not, but sometimes they are. So it's like, that's progress, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
And how do you know the button they hit wasn't exactly what they wanted to say in the first place, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it turns out a lot of educators, I don't know if you know this, can read minds. So maybe they're reading the mind and they know. But what would, again, the question to ask is, what would you think would happen if when they hit this button, we reacted like, oh, what, you hit the button bathroom, we take you to the bathroom. You hit the button donut, we don't have any donuts here. What if we just did that? What do you think would happen?
It's hard to like answer those questions. It's like, well, I guess they would learn that when they say bathroom, they go to the bathroom. And when they say donut, like donuts are either there or not there. Right? Those questions can be powerful. All right, should we keep on?
Yeah, I'll go to the next one. What is the best way to help educators who don't have any kind of functional communication system with their functional skills classroom? So what it sounds like here is we got nothing in the room. There's no AAC, no robust AAC in the room. Is that fair? Put it in the chat or come on if that's what you're getting at there. I think it is, right? Do we all agree that's what the question is asking?
I'm guessing.
Educators who don't have any kind of functional communication system within their functional skills classroom. So What do we think? Thanks, Trudy, for the thumbs up.
We're
Thank you.
starting from ground zero. Go ahead,
What's that,
Jill.
Jill? What'd you say, Jill?
They need to get some functional communication systems. they need to get some and start modeling them and using them, but hopefully there's access to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Figuring out the barriers to why they don't have a functional communication system. I mean, is it a barrier with the knowledge of the staff in the classroom? Is it a financial barrier? What is it?
And if it's a
Love
financial
that.
barrier, like Carrie, you just described how the mindset's going to be a lot harder to get over, where if they understand the mindset and they just don't have the finances, well, now we can go out and look for finances. That's a whole different question, right? That's, can we look at PTAs? Can we look at grants? Can we look at donors choose? Can we just ask our superintendent or whoever holds the purse strings for something? And of course we have low-tech versions of high-tech systems. So we could do the home screen of any of these tools to get started.
My
Fair?
thinking is start with one activity, help them build communication into one activity, be consistent with that one activity, let them see the success, and then expand to another time of day or another environment or another activity and go from there.
Love
Awesome.
it, Trudy. Yes. I feel like let's start small, because that could feel really overwhelming if we come in with all these ideas and this, all these words and all the things, right? So just starting small, getting really good at one thing, and then building that skill over time, I think is perfect advice.
What we've seen work in some places is a high-tech system without the voice. So there's certain systems that you can get for free and on Windows, like emulator software, put that up on the interactive whiteboard or just use it. I don't know what again, our neck of the woods, we have Windows computers, but they flip over and they can be like a tablet. So you can actually use them like a touch screen, and then you use your actual voice to mimic that. Sharon has a follow-up question, which I think is relevant to everybody right now. Do you think each functional classroom, let's just say classroom, maybe we don't need the adjective functional in front of it. Do you think each classroom should have at least one device, even if many of the students do not need it and some already have one? What do we all think? Should every educator have an AAC tool they could use to model on?
Yes.
You guys can probably guess what we think.
Jackie's yes. Robin in the chat's like yes.
Yeah.
To ask it another way, why not? Right? We certainly seen. I was just telling this story in Indianapolis. Educators, kindergarten, first grade, they bring a student has an AAC tool. They use one of these emulating softwares because the speech therapist shows them. Now they use it as a teaching tool just to learn some sight words and some literacy. And then the AAC user moves on to second grade, and they're like, why are you taking that software? Because now that's how I teach some of these words, is I show where it is on this grid, right? Yeah, why not? Why not build the culture around learning language with AAC?
Yes, Jackie says normalize AAC in the classroom. Yeah, it's just a thing that we all have access to and we utilize.
No one would say, oh, we can't have visual supports in our classroom. No, okay, yeah, of course. We put visuals up in special ed and in general ed. We have little posters or whatever all over the room that help us learn, right? And no one would say, well, hearing things is bad, right? I mean, we need to hear things sometimes. If you can hear, you can learn information that way. So what if we did visuals in a structured way with audio supports? It's all just integrated together in AAC.
And I think also like trying to teach teachers in these classrooms the power of it, because I think oftentimes they don't understand what the purpose is, and they think, oh, well, of course, there's a student who's non-speaking, we need AAC for them. But thinking about it as a tool for teaching language and a tool for teaching literacy can be kind of a way to get buy-in with teachers who are like, why do I need this? And then they'll want to advocate for it, right? Like they'll see the power of it and then see how, you know, useful it can be in the classroom.
You ready for the next one, Rachel?
I'm ready.
I think you're up.
Oh, sorry. How do you define robust communication system? What does this look like for beginning learners of AAC versus experienced? All right, you guys, what are the features that are necessary to call a AAC system robust? Can put them in the chat, can put them in our spreadsheet.
Come on the mic and
Just-
yell out.
Oh, yeah, what does a tool need?
First one up in the chat says dynamic display. Makes sense to me. You need to have lots of words, no matter any. There are some low tech systems that can be very robust. So dynamic display might be likely, but not necessary, I would say. For instance, there are pod books that would have lots and lots and lots of words. So I think maybe the question is, can you generate thousands of words? Can you say whatever you want to say, however you want to say it with whatever the tool is? That could be dynamic display, or it could be a low-tech system organized really well.
Yeah.
I would say a variety of words. You can't just have nouns, you can't just have core, you gotta have all the words.
All the words.
Jackie says access to alphabet keyboard. Yes, because we can't possibly program every single word that an individual need to say. So we absolutely need to have access to a keyboard and the alphabet, and also be providing literacy instruction for AAC users. So we see in the chat too, Christina says snug, and then Robin kind of reiterates capable of novel communication. So yes, this idea that we have all of the things in an AAC system to say exactly what we want to say to whoever we want to say it to, and that we could, if we need to, create novel utterances, right? That's part of snug. And thinking about the keyboard is really important in there. Also, one other thing I would say is grammar. Right? Like morphological changes. Chris is like, yeah, get out of my brain. Right?
Yeah, I'm coining this new phrase, core themes. Everyone knows core vocabulary, but we want to expand beyond just the root word and start adding ing, plural, S-E-D. Ing is the first grammatical morpheme in typical language development. So a question for a robust system is, how do you say ing? Does your core board have ing on it? Maybe not. If not, how are you teaching ing? Might be why Jackie wrote dynamic display, because dynamic display will likely have ing on it. But the point is well taken, Rachel. Grammatical. How does the system handle grammar? It has to have grammar for it to be robust. I might also add the ability to add or program in words that are really important to the user. We call this key vocabulary or personal core. You know, if my dog's name, I don't have to be spelling that out every time. I want to be able to just say my dog's name. So I want to be able to add that to my system. So a robust system would have the ability to add in words that that didn't come with it, but I want to add to it because it's important to me. And sort of adjacent to that, I would say either pre-programmed and the ability to program quick fire phrases. So I can have, when all my friends are saying that's totally sus, I don't have to type out totally sus each time or find the word totally and then find the word sus. I can just hit one button that says that's totally sus. I think I'm dating myself there. Does people say sus anymore? I'm like the old dad.
We've moved on from sus, but some of us haven't.
Slay's the new.
Should we keep going? We don't have much time. We never have enough time to answer all the questions.
Sure. Am I up? Sorry, I was.
You're up.
Okay, I'm up. Here we go. Here's the next one. When is it best for a student to use a keyboard to type out what they want to say versus using a picture symbol based system? I have a student that has a device with touch chat, I believe, but he is preoccupied with the keyboard and always navigates there and likes to type random words that he sees. Okay, what do we all think? How do we handle this situation?
I'll just say, while people are thinking of their responses, this is exciting. We have a student who's typing out things and words, and that's awesome.
While people are thinking, I'll say I remember meeting some AAC users on a trip once with Bruce Baker. And Bruce Baker developed the MinSpeak system, and this particular AAC user that we were chatting with was using MinSpeak for only a limited amount, and then would flip over the keyboard, just like this question. Like that person had learned the literacy skills and knew how to type things out. And Bruce was like, if you just practiced on MinSpeak, you could get faster. You'd be a lot faster. And the person was just like, come on, man, I'm doing it with the keyboard. Like yes, I could get a little bit faster, but I know what I'm doing. And I remember feeling torn, like, they're like light years ahead of anyone I met because they're using the keyboard. And Bruce is like, you could be faster. I was like, come on, let's give them credit for what they can do. But I also see, like, you could be faster, like, why is Braille a thing? Because why don't blind people use when they feel with their fingers raised alphanumeric, like, oh, I can feel the A and feel the B, like just raised version. Why do they have Braille? Like, that's a whole different system you have to learn, because you can be a lot faster reading Braille than you can reading a raised alphanumeric. So if you learn Braille, you can be faster. And this was his point. If you could learn MinSpeak, you could be a lot faster.
Who has ideas for this question?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, because it sounds like, I don't know if they're like considering switching to a text-based system, but like when I guess I'm looking at somebody for an AAC system, a new AAC system, I like to know their literacy skills. And if they have literacy skills, I would say, I don't know, second grade or greater literacy skills, like I might consider text-based as a primary AAC system. But if they don't have literacy skills, then I would consider the symbol base as the primary, and then with the key guard as the secondary as they're learning literacy skills. So like right now I have a kiddo who's doing both, because she started on a symbol base and now she's really developed her literacy skills, and she chooses when she goes back and forth between the symbol base and the text. So
Carrie, just quick follow-up question. How old is that student now?
she is just started middle school.
Bingo. That's exactly what I've noticed too, right? Middle school and into high school, I don't necessarily want the thing with the pictures on it. I want to, they see everybody else using letters, right? And a keyboard. So I've seen that sort of self-consciousness come on to students, like, well, I'm going to be out there working and I'm going to be working at Old Navy or whatever. I don't want these picture symbols. I want just the keyboard. And it might be slower, like I said, but it seems to be like more socially acceptable in their own mind.
Right. Yeah. And she just, her little literacy skills are delayed. So she's just gotten to that point as well. And then there was one other point I was going to make with that. And I think she also got to the point, because she was on a word power file, that, although she was typing a lot on that, we had her on a word power 80. So it had the QWERTY on the first page, but she was typing quite a bit. So the symbol-based vocabulary didn't have all the words that she was wanting to communicate. So, yeah.
I would share too, Carrie, that so Touch Chat does have the option with word power, and it has that kind of keyboard in the middle of the home screen, which can be helpful. In addition to literacy skills, I would also look at language. So oftentimes I have students who can type any noun, but they're really not using any core language, and they're not formulating with core language. And the benefit of having a symbol-based system for, a student who's not using a lot of core abstract language is that you have the benefit of modeling that core language. And some of my students, they have the ability to like type out the fringe, right? And then I'm like adding on to that with, incorporating some of the core. If we go to just a text-based system, then we don't have the ability to model that core language. So I'd say that'd be like another thing that I would consider was the language level and how much abstract language and formulation the student's doing to kind of assess that.
I might also say that something to consider would be word prediction, because word prediction, you don't have to type out the entire word. If you can recognize the word, which is a different skill than typing out the whole thing and spelling it out. I just have to spell it close enough that I can recognize the word. The caution that I'll say there is that word prediction, I think, helps you with spelling. It can speed you up in that you don't have to type out each word, or so you have to type out each letter. But the caution would be, if you are super fast at using a keyboard, then it likely will slow you down, right? Because your motor plans get so good, you can type it out faster than stop, recognize it, and hit that button. Right? I can certainly type my name Chris a lot faster than CH and look and find my name from a list.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. All right, should we go to the next question?
Yeah.
How can I convince my SLPs and our behavior interventionists that users need access to robust vocabulary and not just requests or a 9 to 12 square communication board? What do we think, team? This is tricky.
I'm definitely not an expert and don't know for sure, but I deal with this problem a lot, that when we have plans that focus on just requesting, I have encouraged members on my team to limit themselves to just requesting for a little while and see how they feel about that. Like, what is it when you are limited to only one function of communication? And so that we need our plans to be able to allow students to do more than request. I know that requesting feels like the most reinforcing function of communication. So I think it makes sense logically that we would start there, because it hopefully is a way to teach the motivation to communicate for students, but that it's just so limited when that's the only thing we're allowing a student to do, or that we're only teaching them to do that. We're really robbing of opportunities to learn to comment and protest and just all the other things that we communicate for.
Love it. Yes. So Katie says in the chat, give them that size board and see how far they get in conversation. So kind of similar to what you said, Jill, as far as like, when we really think about what are we asking our students to do? It's like, we have the ability to use language for lots of other purposes. And, we have the ability to have access to thousands and thousands of words. So why are we limiting our students? And I think you're right, Jill, in the sense that oftentimes we start with requesting because it's a low-hanging fruit. It's easy to implement, easy to see like a quick win. And then we have students who are just stuck with only requesting, and it's because the people around them aren't showing and modeling other ways to use language in meaningful ways. So kind of to answer this question, like, if those 9 to 12 square, communication boards don't have any ability to model language for other purposes, then how on earth would we expect our students to ever learn how to use language for other purposes?
All right, I think we got time for one more. Sound good? Here we go. What does research say about ELL learners, so I think that's English language learners, using AAC? Should we be providing AAC modeling in strongest language, native language, ? How do we support staff who are already leery to use and model AAC and now adding in another unfamiliar language? What do we think?
Everyone's like, I don't know about this one. Jill, I think you have an idea, yes?
I do. So I used to be an ESL teacher before I became an SLP. And so my gut, although I might be wrong, is just what do we do with other English language learners? And so like I know I had a student last year whose home language was Spanish. She had Down syndrome, so she had some verbalizations, but at school she was gaining in proficiency with English. And so just like what we typically do at school is focus on English and then support the second language, but then made sure that we did training with her parents and had a system that was easy to switch back and forth between Spanish and English so that parents knew how to use the device at home in Spanish. And then we did a little bit of both at school. But we just did whatever we would have done if she was speaking. We used English when it was typical for us to use English, and then supported in Spanish the same way that we did with our other English language learners.
I have to say they are a challenging group though, especially with our kiddos who are non-speaking, who are bilingual, and then they also have cognitive impairment, because the acquisition of that second language is going to take longer, so I think like I try to my best to set up a bilingual AAC system so that the student can have access to their primary language. And I've seen just in practice, like when you give them an AAC, like I just was out to see a student the other day, and Spanish was his primary language, and the therapist had already tried AAC on the English page set and didn't have a great response from the student. And then I was just like, well, let's try him in Spanish. And once he started punching around on the device and started hearing all those familiar words in Spanish, he really engaged with the device. So I think it is important to try your best to provide a bilingual system to them, like the best you can, right? And then, like Jill said, all of those best practices with supporting language of a student who has multiple language. Plus, the AAC device in and of itself is a language. That's another thing to consider too. Like they're having to learn the symbol-based language that is AAC. So,
yeah, and I completely agree. It depends on where they are with their second or third or fourth language acquisition, where they are with their English. If they are brand new to us and have not been exposed to English yet, I don't know that it would be beneficial to start on an English system. But sometimes we're limited if we don't know what their first language is. But we can, that's the beauty of the picture-based systems, is they're somewhat universal. So that's a good, I think in that sense, AAC systems can be really helpful for that population.
Meaning you could teach what the symbol is in both languages or multiple languages. That's what you mean, Jill? Jill's nodding.
Yes.
The other thing I'll add is with the bilingual piece is, kind of reiterating what Jill and you, Carrie, said, like getting really specific when we're talking with families about like what words do they know and understand and use in English and in their second language, and understanding that, having a good sense, because I have students that I've assessed that like, okay, they know these handful of words in Spanish, but then they know these handful of words in English, and then trying to give as many opportunities where we're showing in both languages I think is helpful, but easier said than done. I realize it's hard enough to get our communication partners modeling language, let alone toggling between languages and systems and things like that. But we do the best we can, right?
Well, I have bad news, everybody. The hour is up and we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions left for us to go over and talk about and share together. So here's the thing. Again, you have access to this spreadsheet. You should feel free to write responses into just pick a column and type in a response. If you have a response, these people need your help. That's why they came here, right? So, and we can help each other by filling in this spreadsheet. And if you want to look at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see there's tabs that have what other questions were and what other people's responses were. So you could see it's littered with resources there that might be beneficial or helpful to you. Yeah.
Like tons and tons. All of our Talking with Tech lives you guys have access to now. And a lot of them are similar questions. As we continue to do this, we realize that we all kind of have the same struggles and challenges. And so definitely check out that resource.
I guess the last question I'll ask before we end is, what'd you think? Was this what you needed? Was it fun? Was this helpful? Was it good just to kind of sit in it and chat together? What'd you think?
I know I enjoyed it.
Hey.
I enjoyed it too. It was great.
Amazing. Thank you guys for being so great and engaging with us and helping to answer some of these questions and putting in the chat. It was super great to spend the hour with you guys.
Yeah, everyone here is your extended work family. You can lean on each other to figure out these questions together. You are not alone out there.
Well, thank you. I know you guys need to run. You've got engagements after this. Many thanks to the both of you, Chris and Rachel, for joining us today.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. You guys were awesome.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Woo!